Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Salem Lutheran. Good to have you all here in the sanctuary this morning. I want to welcome also those of you who are listening to the audio stream of today's presentation over Salem's telephone ministry. My name is Pastor Wayne Hebner, and we're pleased to have with us a special guest today, Pastor Jason Groth and his family. Emily is here along with Gideon, Esther, Martha, and Joanna. And it's our pleasure to send them on their way today as Jason prepares for his first call into the ministry as a missionary to the Central American nation of Belize. We've invited Jason to join us today for a service of sending and blessing. We're doing that in all three services. We also invited him to spend a few minutes this morning telling us more about his upcoming adventure in Belize. And so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Pastor Jason Groth. And many of you remember, Jason is a former vicar, our final vicar. We broke the mold when he left. He was here with us 2022 and 2023. He's a 2024 graduate of Concordia Seminary, St. Louis, and received his first call back in April. So welcome again, Jason, and I'll give this to you.
There's an attendance clipboard and an offering basket,
I'll put that in the back of the room.
which is in the back of the room. All right, thanks again, Pastor. Man, it's always good to be back with Salem because I feel like I'm home. So, man, thanks for being here. And this is pretty informal, so if you have questions or comments, just jump in because this isn't super formal. But yeah, we're talking about international mission. Me and Emily received the call, like Pastor said, on call night. We knew that it was a possibility. It was we had said yes, that we were open to international calls. You have to say yes or no. They don't want people going off international if you really don't want to. That's not good for the church. It's not good for you. And we said, well, if that's where the church needs us, then we're happy to go. And so when I stepped up and they said, Jason Groth, and he said, the placement guy goes, whoa, your packet's pretty big. I went, oh man, here we go. I knew it. I knew we were going international. So we got called to Belize, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But as we get there, I'm going to talk about why international missions, how we think about international missions, and we're being placed in a part of the world called, the region is called Latin America and the Caribbean, so it encompasses all of that. And I'll tell a lot of stories about the Dominican Republic, and that's because that's where our regional headquarters is. That's where our office that coordinates all of our missionaries in that region is. And also I've been there, so I've got lots of stories about the Dominican. But then we'll get to Belize at the end. And again, if you have any questions, just jump in. Okay, so why international missions? Well, about 175 years, give or take, the Synod was formed. So a bunch of Lutheran churches who all believed and taught and confessed the same thing said, hey, let's do work together because there's some things that would be more efficient and probably be better if we just did as a group versus individually. So there's a long list of reasons why we should get together and do work together. Two of the primary reasons were to train our pastors and to send missionaries. So you can imagine the chaos it would be if every congregation tried to train their own pastors. You'd have a wild variety of curriculums and outcomes. Pastor to pastor, you wouldn't really know what you're going to get. All of the LCMS pastors have been taught at our synodical seminaries, and so we kind of have you can expect that we all have had roughly the same training. Certainly it changes year to year a little bit, but we have all the fundamentals year to year. And again, sending missionaries. Imagine if every church sent their own missionaries. So if Salem sent a missionary to Tanzania, and then Christ Memorial sent a missionary to Tanzania, maybe we'd have double the cost, and two, we might be working against each other on accident, So we work together as a synod. About 5,800, give or take, churches work together to do work like training pastors and sending missionaries. Okay, so the synod, which is just this fancy word, it means walking together, essentially. That's what we're trying to do. And so the corporate, for lack of a better term. The headquarters of the synod is over in Kirkwood, and they do work not just as they please. They actually do the work that you give to them as a church in convention. So every couple of years we have a convention where all the partner churches come together and say, this is the work we want you to do. Go do it on our behalf. Well, in 1998, this is the mission statement. I know, don't fall asleep. Most people fall asleep at mission statements. This is the mission statement you gave your synod, your headquarters, and your synodical officers to do on your behalf. So it says, in grateful response to God's grace and empowered by the Holy Spirit through word and sacraments, the mission of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod is to vigorously make known the love of Christ by word and deed within our churches, communities, and the world. So you guys are Salem, here in Afton, and your members live within a driving range of that church. So you are the church here. This is your community. Then there's that last little bit, the world. How does Salem make the love of Christ known throughout the world? Well, that's where I come in on your behalf. You are sending me and other missionaries through your participation in the synod all throughout the world. And so, there it goes. As we go out into the world to do this work on your behalf of making the love of Christ known, we want to be as efficient and as effective as we can. And you can imagine how complicated this is going to get. Planting churches in Moscow, very different from planting churches in Lima, Peru. Different languages, different monetary systems, different governments, different traditions and cultures. So they're all going to be a little bit different, but also there's going to be a lot of things that are fundamentally the same all over the world, wherever we're doing this work. So we split the world into 4 regions. We've got Asia, Africa, the huge Eurasia, which boggles the mind. It goes from Saudi Arabia up to Norway, and then all to Siberia and Greenland, down to Spain. It's a huge region. Luckily, I'm not going there. I'm going to Latin America and the Caribbean. And so that's what we're going to talk about. I have more stories about your missionaries throughout the world. It's amazing the work that's happening. And I wish I had 3 hours we could talk about it. I didn't realize as a layperson all the work that was happening in the synod on our behalf. And so it's really worthwhile to go on and check out all their stories. Okay, so the work that we do is going to look different. It's going to feel different depending on where we're at in the world. But again, those fundamentals are going to be there. We're going to be spreading the gospel, planting Lutheran churches, and showing mercy. So we call those the 3 pillars of international missions. No matter where we're at in the world, we're trying to do these 3 things. Now, again, that's going to look a little bit different. It's going to sound a little different, but those are the things we're trying to do. When I say spreading the gospel, what do I mean? What is the gospel? Anybody? The word of Jesus? Esther? That Jesus loves them, that's good. Yep, that Jesus lived, that he died, he rose again for the forgiveness of the sins of the world, right? That's the gospel. So where do you go every week to hear that gospel? You come right here to Salem, right here to church. So when we say spreading the gospel, that's kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about a proclamation of that gospel. And where does that happen? It happens at churches. So the first pillar really leads into the second one. And this is kind of, if you think about this just logically, if you were out in somewhere foreign and you tell someone about Jesus and you're like, yeah, he lived and he died and then he rose again from the grave so that you could be forgiven, and they're like, whoa, I believe that, what would you do? You say, oh, well, I'll see you, No, you would connect them to a church, right? You'd say, man, let's get you connected to the body. Let's maybe get you baptized. Let's give you some more instruction. Let's get you to the Lord's Supper, right? We would connect them to the body of Christ, the church. So that's what we're doing. We're planting Lutheran churches. Then there's that last one. We're showing mercy. We love the entire individual, both their spiritual health, obviously. Number one, we want them to come to saving faith in Jesus because that's really ultimately what's going to save them. But of course, man, if you can imagine the tragic situations we're going to run into all around the world. We care about the whole individual. If you look at Mark, the book of Mark even, the first words of Jesus, the time has now been fulfilled. Repent and believe the gospel. First thing he wants them, believe in the one who God sent, Jesus Christ. And then what does he do for like the next 7 chapters? He runs around healing people, right? So there's kind of this, the life of the church, The proclamation of the gospel and the caring for people's physical well-being, we love our neighbors, right? That goes hand in hand. So we show mercy in a variety of ways, depending on the situation. Some people have asked me, what does that mean? Well, again, showing mercy, I like to use Moscow and Peru for some reason as examples. Showing mercy in Moscow is going to look different from showing mercy in Peru, just because they're different places and they have different needs. All right, 4 regions. I'm going to Latin America and the Caribbean. It encompasses all the way from Mexico all the way down to the tip of South America and all the islands of the Caribbean. And it's a big region. It has 9 partner churches. What's a partner church? Partner church is a church body, a national church body that believes, teaches, and confesses the same things we do. So we are one church body in a sense, because we have the same beliefs. We understand what the Scripture says is X. We find that in our confession called the Book of Concord. And so that's an exposition of what we find in Scripture. So there's 9 partner churches, and the light blue is where we're actively engaged in doing mission, so those 3 pillars. Then, of course, there's future opportunities where we're always in talks with either the local church body or the local government, depending on the situation, to try to come in and start a national church body. Because that's when we know mission really works. Okay, one of our earliest opportunities in the LCMS, we sent guys down to Brazil. Now you can see Brazil is now a partner church. Before, there was no Lutheran Church of Brazil, and after years of hard work by our missionaries down there, guess what they do? They do 2 things that tell us that mission works. They train their own pastors at their own seminaries, and they send their own missionaries. They send Portuguese-speaking missionaries back to Portuguese-speaking West Africa to do mission. So how do we know in Belize if our work is finished? When the national church body can train their own pastors and send their own missionaries. That's a really mature church body, and we can kind of say, hey, you're brothers and sisters in Christ. Let us know if you need anything. Keep the phone line open, but you're on your own as far as doing your work. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, we're spreading the gospel. Again, we have a very specific understanding of what that is. You can find cruise opportunities to go on a cruise where you'll go to a country, a third world country, and you'll do an eyeglass clinic or a vaccine clinic, or maybe you'll build a house, right? And then you'll come back on the ship and continue on, down the slip and slide and things. So is that a mission? Well, no. It's certainly maybe a good thing to help people in need, right? But we're not going to call it a Christian mission. We're not going to call it spreading the gospel, right? There's no proclamation of the gospel in that. So that's what we mean when we say spread the gospel. And again, from Scripture and many other places, but this is Romans 10, for everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him of whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they're sent? As it's written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news. So faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. We're trying to raise up preachers to proclaim that good news. And this is where we do it in our region. This is your seminary in the Dominican Republic. It's called Concordia the Reformer Seminary. It's in Palmar, Arriba, which is like a little farming town, really. It's a very rural town. It's about 20 to 25 minutes from Santiago, which is a large city in the center of in the Dominican. It's this building right here that has 3 levels. The bottom floor is a Lutheran day school, so there is no Lutheran day school system in the country currently. This is kind of our pilot program to start training Lutheran school teachers and raise up that first generation of Lutheran school teachers. It currently goes through, I think, kindergarten through 4th grade. Emily always corrects me on that. She's right. And so that's in the works, and that was fun to see. The middle floor of this 3-floor building is the seminary, and that's where we send guys from all over the region to get trained. It's a baccalaureate level program, so they come out of there with a bachelor's degree. There's a meeting room, Zoom classroom, because you can imagine we're not going to have professors move to the Dominican to teach one class, right? We're just going to zoom them in for that one class. That's the most efficient use of our resources. But there are like 1 or 2 or maybe 3 professors that live in the Dominican and teach the majority of the classes. And then the top floor, there's also a chapel in that middle floor. So just like here in St. Louis and in Fort Wayne, our guys are encouraged to go to chapel every day to be formed by good preaching and the liturgy and hymns. Same thing there. They go to chapel every day. And then the top floor has a conference room, a set of bunk rooms for like short-term teams that come in, and 2 offices, and then a shower area and a bathroom. So, Little Concordia the Reformer Seminary is where we're teaching guys to preach. And so the class this year is all these guys kneeling here in the front, and above them are either professors, local missionary pastors, families of the members there, and they couple their graduation ceremony with a theological symposium. So they bring in people from not only Dominican Republic but from around the region and from America to do this theological symposium. So they teach on a topic all week long leading up to graduation. And this year was planting Lutheran churches, the theology of planting Lutheran churches. And the other thing I want to call out are we have a couple deaconesses here. So you guys are a little bit familiar with deaconesses, but what is a deaconess? Cheryl, who runs the program, Deaconess Cheryl, she explained it this way. I thought this was really good. It's all a deaconess is a woman who wants to use all of her skills and all of her talents to serve the church, serve her Lord, and serve her neighbors. So what do? We graduate almost 100 deaconesses through this seminary a year. Latin America, by and large, is matriarchal. So if you can get grandma or mom to come to church, the rest of the family will typically come. And so they're out there evangelizing to other women. They're running soup kitchen, like food banks, clothing drives. They're helping children who are maybe not in a good home situation get to a more stable situation. They're just very active in their communities. And the other deaconess, she put it this way. She goes, what deaconesses do is they open doors, literally sometimes, and figuratively. They make sure that the church is open and welcome to visitors. And then they build bridges to their community. And then also they take visitors and help build bridges inside the church. They introduce them to people and make sure that they're welcomed and then connected with the body. So a lot of great work being done all over the region by really faithful women, many of which have been trained here at your seminary as deaconesses. The building up on the hill there, it's a pretty tough climb. That's where the seminary students live. We call it Golgotha. Yeah. So they have to climb this trail up every night, and they come down for classes every morning. They've got good quads by the end. But they spend 2.5 days or 3 days a week helping a local missionary pastor plant churches. So by the time they come out of seminary, because they don't have a vicarage, they actually probably have more practical experience than we do, because, they're right in there doing outreach, evangelism, active church planting in the Dominican Republic. So, other things. There was a committee that came together and produced a truly Latin American hymnal. So this is a Spanish language hymnal. And it was in collaboration with all those partner churches in the region. And it looks just like your LSB, right? Well, it's not. It's not actually a Lutheran service book. But if you were to open it up and turn to Divine Service 1, it's going to look pretty similar because those liturgies are ancient. They don't change very much. So you'd find a lot in this hymnal very familiar. And it has all of Martin Luther's hymns. They're very proud of that. Even our Lutheran service book doesn't have every single one of Martin Luther's hymns. And about 30% of the hymns are contemporary, which means that they've been written, produced, and sung in the last 60 or 50 years, which is considered contemporary for a hymn. So there's also only one pipe organ that they could tell me of in Latin America, and we're not sure if it works or not. So all the music accompaniment is in accompaniment for a guitar or a piano, because that's you can find keyboards and guitars to accompany the music. Okay, we found out also after a couple of years that the average Latin American pastor who is going out and preaching and teaching, doing Bible studies, devotions, pastoral care. They had 5 books on average. So I don't know if you've ever seen Pastor Hebner's library, Pastor Hill's library, more than 5 books, yeah? Probably 500, yeah. Only 6, yeah. So we put together this translation team to help translate Lutheran theological works into Spanish, and that's available to the guys. They can either buy a jump drive to take with them, or they can, for a nominal fee, they can download them off the internet if they don't want to take the jump drive. It just helps upkeep the website. The fee does. So yeah, it's called the VDMA translation team. It's the initials for the Latin for the word of the Lord endures forever. Art, do you know that? I'm just kidding. You probably do know it. Word of the Lord endures forever in Latin? Close enough. I'm messing with the art. Okay, we're planting Lutheran churches. So you can see here by the numbers, there's 8 in the Dominican Republic. Why is that? That's the headquarters. That's where all the warm bodies are. That's where we have a lot of help. That's where we have the seminary students out helping the guys keep, they've just got a lot of man hours they can commit to planting churches, which always helps, right? More helpers always makes things go easier. Other areas that are kind of popping off, we've got Peru, Uruguay, Chile, and of course Belize, which we'll get to in a minute. It says Lutheran church plants 42. Well, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod has planted more than 42 churches in 175 years. We've probably planted hundreds, if not thousands of churches. These are the ones we are active in our region today. And this is actually a little dated. I think there's a few more. This is probably a year or 2 old, so we're a little behind on this slide. Okay, if you were going to plant a church, would you plant it there? Yes, okay. And that's exactly what we did. So this is an old disco, okay? And one night, 2 gentlemen got into a heated argument, and pretty soon a weapon was produced, and there was only one guy in the argument. That's where a guy died. So everyone stopped going to the disco because it's where people get killed. So what did we do? We cleaned her up. So where once people avoided the place because somebody died, now they go to hear about someone who died for them. The copyrights itself. So yeah, beautiful church plant called Iglesia Luterana Pueblo Nuevo. So this is the church of the community is called Pueblo Nuevo. And this is Pastor Raphael. And Emily and I got together. You can see Emily's pretty in pink there, and there's my bald dome over the shoulder. Pastor Raphael, really great pastor, really charismatic guy. Yep. She led the mission, or the trip. And so these are some of our other classmates. This is a career missionary named Erin. She's very fluent in Spanish, so she helped us get around and made sure that we weren't, lost somewhere in the Dominican. Yes. Tori kind of started this a year or 2 ago. I think Nick Palmer went on the first one. And so now she's been continuing to do it every year. So that's been really great to learn about Lutheran mission hands-on right there in the Dominican. We got to visit with some of the local church members of this church. There was no church there. And then Pastor Fritchie, Pastor Raphael, they went throughout the community and they knocked on every door and said, look, we've got this church down here. You're welcome. We want you to come. And the members here, they were some of the first people to join. And they said the church has really brought the community back to life. Since COVID, everyone's kind of stays in their house. And if you know Latin American culture, man, especially Dominican culture, it happens on the street. I mean, people are just out and loud and living their life. It's beautiful. But they said after COVID, everyone kind of stopped coming out. And so they said Pastor Fritchie and Pastor Raphael have done a lot of good work in the community, just getting people to talk to one another again. And of course, join the church. This is called the Christmas tree. You can see it's decorated for Christmas all year round. There's no, they don't take it down after Christmas. It's just there. It's lit up at night. And the members there, they've let the community know, look, if you need prayer or just someone to talk to during the week, come down to the tree. Come down to the Christmas tree. We'll pray with you. We'll talk with you. And if we really need, we'll call one of the pastors and we'll get them down here if you're having a crisis. And the man in the hat, in the white shirt, he actually was there. He's not a member of the church yet, but he had been in a really horrific crash, a car crash. Right over this wall is there was a tarp covering his car. He was T-boned. He shouldn't be alive, really. And he was just saying, man, the members of the church really rallied around him and helped. He was on drugs. It was just not a good situation. And he was just giving thanks to God that the members of the church were there and available for him and really walking with him through this dark time in his life. So a lot of good work going on in the Dominican Republic, planting churches. And that's just one example of one of the church plants. There's a lot more. Okay, we're showing mercy. What does that look like? Well, in the Dominican, when we got started in 2004, 2005, one of the first things that we received was a grant from Bethesda. So maybe some of you remember that. It's a group that does a lot of work with people with disabilities. So we got a grant to help train this. There was a facility for children with disabilities, and the staff was undertrained. They had no real training on how to work with and help people with disabilities. And so our team, including Deaconess Danelle and Pastor Cray, went in there with some more Bethesda helpers, and they trained all the workers to help the residents and give them some dignity, some honor. Because in 2004, 2005, the law in the Dominican Republic did not allow a hospital to issue a birth certificate to anyone with a disability. They were considered subhuman. There was a big stigma on families that had people with disabilities. And so, actually, the members, these are some of the members of the home there. This is the Home of the Good Shepherd, our pilot program to kind of help the government of the Dominican Republic realize the benefits of giving people with disabilities dignity, honor, because they're an individual with worth, because Christ died for them. We found and adopted, in a sense, most of the members of this house just off the street. So we found some of them just kind of wandering around trying to survive on their own, abandoned by their families, because again, there's a big stigma on having a person with a disability in your family. And so after years of training the people at the youth home, and then finally we made a jump, we found there was an adult home that was even bigger. That it was the conditions there were atrocious. People were handcuffed to beds and locked in rooms and in various states of undress, and some of them had not been fed in a while. So we went in again and trained all the workers on how to give people dignity and honor, and just call them a name. Just give them a name, something as simple as that. And of course, the first person we hired to help us with our home, the Home of the Good Shepherd here, was Marcella. She's right there in Marisol. I keep calling her Marcella. Marisol. She's an angel. She's way overqualified. She has a degree, a doctor's degree in occupational therapy and physical therapy. First thing, when we bring in the Dominican Republic government, we say, look how well these people are doing with just a little bit of care and with somebody who knows what they're doing, some rehabilitation of the disability and everything. And they loved it. They were like, this is awesome. First thing they did was hire Marisol. So she now runs that large adult facility that we were actively in early on. In 2013, not exclusively, but largely due to the work that your missionaries did with people with disabilities, the law was changed, and now people with disabilities are issued a birth certificate, which gives them access to basic health care and basic education. So that was a huge win. I think we should all be proud of that. And those are the kind of mercy efforts that we want to duplicate elsewhere in the region. Life issues are not as big of an issue in Latin America, but they are on the rise. And so we're trying to get ahead of it with our educational program called Vida Abundante, which just means abundant life. It's from John 10:10. And we're just trying to educate that everyone, regardless of stage of life, whether you're at the very end of your life or you're still in the womb, you have value, and Christ died for you, and we ought to treat people with that dignity and honor that they deserve. Okay, so finally we can move to Belize. I had to look it up because I wasn't quite sure where it was. It's that little strip of land right there under Mexico. Yeah, it is Central American, but it's more Caribbean in feel. So it's a Central American nation, but it feels like you're out in the Caribbean. It runs on island time. So if the store says it opens at 9, come around 10:30. And there's actually whole communities in Belize where their motto as a community is go slow. And they mean that in every sense. Driving, visiting, everything. Just go slow. Yes, and be happy, but while you're slow. All right, why are you going to send me? Well, you know me. I'm just some knucklehead from Michigan. Raised on a horse farm. My dad was a plumber and a heating guy. We ran a mechanical contracting business. My mom ran a trail riding business, hence all the horses. We rented houses and we flipped houses on the side. So all those skills and experiences, right, they're going to help me just by having this broad experience. But really it's this other crew, the other members up there that are going to make me successful. And of course with the Lord's help. Emily spent 9 months in Quito, Ecuador on 2 short-term trips. She loves Latin America, is eager to get back, so her experiences and her skills are going to help. And of course, you know how friendly my kids are, almost annoyingly so. No, they're great. But they're going to make friends with people in the community much easier than I am. I'm a big, hairy, white American guy, okay? But kids, they just start playing games, and that's going to open doors for me to build relationships that I couldn't on my own. And then when appropriate, share the gospel and invite people to the church. All right, we're planting Lutheran churches, but we're planting Lutheran churches in Belize. So what does that mean? What's that going to look like? So, biggest blue pie chunk on the graph are mestizo. Mestizo people are descendants from the Maya indigenous people and Spanish conquistadors. They speak kind of a sub-branch of what's called Quechua. It's like a Mayan indigenous language, but it has Spanish idioms and phrases in there, so it's almost like someone who comes around speaking Spanglish, right? But with Quechua, so it's Quechua-ish. So the red pie part of the graph there is Creole people. That's a descendant from Carib Indians and I think either French or English settlers or something like that. I think it's French. So they speak Creole, which is, it's like, okay, so if you know someone from really deep South Louisiana, imagine that, but then with more Jamaican accent. Yeah, it's close to that. So they speak Creole, and then there's Garfuna people, which is the orange pie slice. Those are people from West Africa and Carib Indians as their descendants. They speak Garfuna. I'm going to say Garfuna. That's not the actual name of the language. I need to find that out and memorize that. But basically, Garfuna. And then there's Spanish, people of direct Spanish descent. And this was really the most interesting, that light blue pie chunk. That's Canadian expats, Taiwanese immigrants, and Mennonites. A huge population of Mennonites in Central America, right there in Belize. So there's whole communities where it's majority Mennonite. Lots of horse and buggies, and you can, if you want a house built, you can go get a price from the Mennonites. They'll build you a house. They're known as good builders in the country. So when we say plant Lutheran churches in Belize, well, where? To who? In what people group? And also mestizo, the largest pie chunk, that can actually be broken down into 3 or 4 other slices because they have different tribes, and not every tribe plays well with other tribes. So you have to really be aware of who you're speaking to and who you're inviting to different things, because you just have to be aware. Okay, so Pastor Heavner, Pastor Hill, when you go around to do your pastoral calls, you might travel down a road like that, right? Maybe not with the misty mountains and the jungle, right? But that quality of road, that's like Gravois, right? It's a nice road. Then you take a left. Okay, so there are 3 major highways, which is what we would call that last picture, but every other road looks like this. So the 3 major highways kind of take you to the southern part of the country, to the center, and then up towards to the north to Mexico, but all the other roads are dirt. And there's 2 seasons in Belize, rainy and dry. So during rainy season, it's really handy to have a 4-wheel vehicle because everything's muddy. And this road could be totally washed out by a heavy rain. Just the other day, well, as you might know, there's a tropical depression coming through, tropical depression Nadine, or tropical storm Nadine, And it put just, I think today, 2.5 inches of rain in Belize. And that's just one day. I think there's several more inches on the way. So we're going to have to go out and find people. Most people, especially in the center of the country, are subsistence farmers. They grow their own food, and then whatever they have extra, they take into the open-air markets and have like a family stall where they'll sell the rest to their neighbors or to whoever, and that's how they earn money to buy things they need to pay their electrical bill and get clothes, and if they're lucky, have a vehicle. Many times vehicles are shared amongst a larger extended family group, and everyone contributes to keeping it on the road. A lot of people walk everywhere. A lot of people use bicycles, lots of bicycles on the road, lots of motorcycles because they're cheaper. And then there are you'll see people riding horseback, probably not as often as you might have at one point, but there are still, we were driving down the road, there's wild horses too, so you just like, there's a whole herd of horses just off to the side of the road, and yeah, I don't know who they belong to or if they belong to anybody. But okay, I want to introduce you to Yasmin and Oscar. So one of our primary locations where we're planting a church currently, Church of the Good Shepherd, is in a place called Valley of Peace. Yasmin is a single mother, and her son Oscar, due to, it was really just a lack of training at one point. There was kind of a generation where the midwives and things they were doing some techniques during birth that were causing developmental and cognitive disabilities. And so Oscar he is a young child with a disability, and the Church of the Good Shepherd in Valley of Peace actually takes up a collection, like a door offering every week. And then Pastor Flores, he goes out and prays with Yasmin and makes sure that Oscar has everything he needs so that he's well taken care of physically. This is Pastor Flores here in the forefront. Yasmin's not a part of the church yet, but she knows who Christ is. She's seen Christians before. Belize, because it's English speaking primarily, it's easy to go to and it's easy to leave. So missionaries come and then missionaries go after a year or two. So one part of our ministry, if the Lord wills, we want to be there a long time to help build that trust and that longevity in the community so that people know us and know we can be trusted. We're driving around with Pastor Flores here. He's a great pastor. I'm going to learn a lot from him. He started a youth group basically with boys 15 to 21. There's not a lot of industry in the country, not a lot for young men to do, so they just rove around, just horsing around, sometimes getting into trouble, sometimes just being boys, So he started this soccer skills camp, and he had a lot of boys come to this. This is Mario, who's like a local alderman or a local councilman for the city, and there's this tragic story where during this skills camp, the goalie, who was on his motorcycle one day, was hit and killed. And they held the funeral right there at the Church of the Good Shepherd on the outskirts of town. And all the boys and many families that don't normally come came to that funeral. And Mario said, it was really tragic that young man lost his life. But all those boys were in the pews, and many of them heard the gospel maybe for the first time. So even from that tragic thing that happened, maybe some good can come out of it. Again, this is Pastor Flores. This is ministry in Belize. We're a first-generation Lutheran church plant. There's not, when we say we're Lutheran, some people kind of go, is that some sort of weird cult, right? They don't know church history. They don't know Martin Luther. They don't know the Reformation. So there's a lot of education that has to happen. And in the history of the LCMS, we've found over the ages that you need about 75 years of mission work in order to have that 3 generations of Lutherans, so that when we kind of step back, there's a depth to the church so that it can stand on its own without any support. So we're kind of that first generation. We just got started in the country less than 10 years ago, and so we've got 65 years or so to go. So we're that first generation. We're making relationships and kind of starting the church from the ground up. This is Belize. I know you can't read all those bubbles. That's okay, but what I want you to know from this is that there are 6 states. They call them districts, but there are 6 states in the country. There's Corozal in the far north, Orange Walk Belize, Cayo, Stone Creek, and Toledo. And all the green squares or rectangles, those are where we have active preaching stations. Now that may be a building like Church of the Good Shepherd in Valley of Peace or Christ Lutheran Church down in Stone Creek, or I think there's one other one. I don't know what the name of the church, but up in Trial Farm, we just bought this old warehouse and converted it into a church. Or it might be like in San Ramon, where there's this lawyer who's a believer, and he wants people to hear the gospel. And so he opens up his business to like 9 to 12 people every weekend, and we go and proclaim the gospel to people in San Ramon. Another weird thing happened is Herb, my supervisor, was over in Chetumal, and there's a man in Chetumal. He has a guitar, and he loves Jesus, and he wants everyone to know about Jesus, and so he runs around singing songs to Jesus and inviting people to gather to hear the gospel. And so he got with Herb and said, "Can you come and preach to these people I have gathered?" And Herb said, "Well, the Lutheran Church of Mexico is really your church body. I need to check with them." He called, and they said, "We have no one to send out to the Yucatan Peninsula to this group. Can you cover it?" So in Chetumal, Mexico, we have a preaching station. We actually have two up there, one in Chetumal and then one about 60 miles inland into the peninsula. Again, both those were really kind of gathered by that one guy and his guitar. He just loves Jesus and wants people to hear about it. The red or orange rectangles, those are future possibilities. We have people, one or two or maybe three, that want to gather. We're just waiting for the right time, the right place, the right people to be in place to plant churches in Belmopan and San Ignacio are those two reddish, orange. That's where they're going. Our long-term goal is to have at least one church planted in each one of the states so that people of that state have at least one location where they can go and hear the gospel proclaimed. The purple rectangle is a mercy center. The Belize Mission Society, which is it's mostly LCMS group that comes down 10 to 12 times a year to do mission work. They have a station right behind our church where they offer dental clinics, eyeglass clinics, nutritional program, VBS. They also sponsor kids to go to high school because education goes through 8th grade. But then if you want to go beyond that, you have to pay some money, and not a lot of people have extra money to send their children to high school. So if someone shows the aptitude and the interest, then the Belize Mission Society has this whole process to like interview them and say, are you really interested? Are you going to keep your grades up? There's a whole process. And then they'll send them to high school. Any questions on that? Yes. Yes. Well, what is church? It's, we would define it as the gathering of all believers where the gospel is preached and the sacraments are rightly administered. Now, certainly that can happen under a tree, so we don't need a building, but of course, if you go anywhere and there's a gathering of believers that don't have a building, typically they like to have a place dedicated to that purpose. So that is our long-term goal, is to have a place dedicated to those purposes. Yep. Yeah, we would call, technically, San Ramon, which is a lawyer's office, that's not our building, and we don't own it. We just go there and we preach and we baptize, and when appropriate, when people have been instructed, we give the Lord's Supper. So we would call that a church, even though we don't have a space dedicated as called a church building. But certainly, yeah, we would call it a church. Yeah. Yeah, good point. Yeah, Trial Farm, you'll see it in the video, the warehouse that they bought. Yeah, that was just a gathering of people that would hear the word and be baptized, and then eventually they were like, you know what, let's get a place. And they found that abandoned warehouse and built it into a church. So we'll see that in a second. All right, so you can see there's lots of preaching stations, more preaching stations to come, more hopefully full-fledged, full-bodied church in the strongest sense of the word. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 5 preaching stations is because how do you define? So this is a building where we preach and teach and everything. This is a church. This is now a church. This is just a lawyer's office. This is a town square with a big area where we can gather and preach. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's actually that village outside of Chetumal. So yeah, 5 or 6 places where we're preaching, and then hopefully those will turn into full-sized, full-throated churches. It's all by degrees at this point. We're on the ground. This is the first thing. How would you start a church? Well, start by gathering and preaching and see where the Lord takes it. We can plant, we can water. The Lord gives the growth. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're claiming those as ours right now, as far as that's part of our mission. Yeah. So our mission is to the country of Belize, but even our work will take us over into Guatemala even, which has its own national church body. But when you're out there in the jungle, where's the border? Depends on who you ask. So, yes, our mission is to Belize, but really it's Belize and anyone who wants to hear the good news of Jesus, including Mexico, including Guatemala. Yeah. 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 Yeah, sugarcane and citrus fruit are big crops, and so they'll bring in workers from Guatemala and Mexico during harvest time to do that work. And so, yeah, our work is just going to be fluid over the borders because the nature of the area. Does that answer your question? Okay. So yeah, here's I like to do the little reveal. The clicker doesn't like me. I'm too far away from it. All right, so yeah, we've got all those preaching stations. We've got lots of places where we can preach. We've got Pastor Birch, who is very experienced, and he's actually our area facilitator. So he, for lack of a better term, he manages the missionaries in Venezuela, Peru, Panama, Honduras, Belize, and I think either Cayman Islands or Jamaica. So he's very busy. He's always on the phone, always emailing. He's always flying out to some conference or some training with the guys in these other countries. But he also tries every weekend to cover a pulpit for us. So, I mean, he's just everywhere. You can't stop this guy. Here's his wife, Marky. We have Pastor Flores, his wife, Karina, and their son, Lucas. And they actually have another baby. So this photo is a little old. They have Mateo now. And then we have Pastor Wildauer, his wife, Robin, their sons, Samuel and David, and their daughters, Liza and Lydia. And, of course, lots of stations to fill, lots of pulpits to fill. Here we come. You know us. One of our primary outreaches to the community, especially in Valley of Peace and other primarily Spanish-speaking towns, because, again, it's an English-speaking nation, but it borders Mexico and Guatemala, so lots of Spanish speakers. In order for the Spanish-speaking children to matriculate into kindergarten, they have to speak basic English. So we have Little Lambs Daycare in Valley of Peace where we teach basic English to the little doo-wappers so that they can then enter into kindergarten in the Belize school system. And so this is part of that program. And what do we use to teach them English? The Bible. So by the end, they know who Jesus is. They know what he's done for them. And that's a key part of the program. Healthcare is hit or miss. If you have money, you can find healthcare. If you don't, you can't. So you can imagine going most of your life needing corrective lenses, not being able to get them, and we bring in an optometrist and a group that has that experience and those skills, and you get corrective lenses for the first time. That's some of the mercy work, some of the outreach that we're doing. All of our outreach and mercy work always comes part and parcel with a proclamation of the gospel. It's not like a wait your turn until we proclaim the gospel. Okay, now you can go get your corrective lenses. But it's all at the same time, right? We're leading prayer groups and devotions and making sure that people understand this is the work of the church because Jesus loves them and came and died for them. That's the first and primary thing. But also, man, we want to help you see or get a vaccine or the nutritional program they do down in Soundbite. A lot of the kids eat a lot of fried food. Just lots of, it's cheap and easy, and so we try to help them, have a more well-balanced diet. Like I said, the work's going to take me over the border. This is Guatemala. So it's not as black and white, Belize, not Belize. It's where can we do, where's the Lord leading us? Is it over in Chetumal, Mexico? Is it over the border in Guatemala? This man had been homebound for 3 years, unable to walk due to a physical condition. And so the Belizean church took up a collection, and over time they saved up enough money to buy this man a wheelchair. I think his son's smile says it all. He's ready for his dad to get out of the house for the first time in 3 years. Yep. Okay, so this is a video, if we can get it to work. It's a little dated, but it gives you a nice snapshot of what life is like and what ministry is like in Belize. First, we got to get it to work, though. Okay, here we go. That's Valley of Peace. Get over here. Again, Valley of Peace, that's Church of the Good Shepherd. They preach 50% of the time in English, 50% of the time in Spanish. Here we are teaching English to a little doo-wapper. That's our Guatemalan friend. This is Trial Farm. That's that warehouse they converted over. So this was a gathering of believers that was being preached, to and with up there, and then they finally bought that building. Palm Sunday, a familiar sight. Toucan, state bird. Lots of people walking. Safety laws are a little lax in Belize. Lots of farming. That's a pupusa, a delicious, deconstructed tamale filled with stuff. It's an El Salvadorian dish. This is San Bite, a fishing village down in Stone Creek State. If you're down on the coast, beautiful Caribbean waters. This is Trial Farm. Lots of beautiful woodwork. Lots of woodworking happens in Belize. Mahogany is the state tree. It's illegal to cut one down. There's Yasmin and Oscar, some Garfuna children. Nice Easter vigil there. So underneath Christ Lutheran Church in Sanbite. Our humble altar, the folding table. Oh, thank you, Herb. So yeah, we have ways that we can partner with U.S. churches to come in and do different projects. There's lots of work to be done in Belize. Again, we're that first generation, so we're kind of learning on the fly what the needs of the community are and kind of going where the Lord leads us. We have outreach opportunities. We have certainly service opportunities. If churches have nurses or doctors or anything, we can do more medical mercy outreach. Just depends on each congregation and their skills and talents. And so there's ways for people to partner and come down and help us. So thank you for sending us. We need your support. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I would love it if we could be in your prayers of the church once or twice a month and your personal prayers. Primarily, our prayer is obviously for our health and safety, but also for the people of Belize, that the Holy Spirit goes before us. He softens hearts, makes a way for the gospel, because that's what we're there to do. We're there to tell people about Jesus. So, thank you. Yeah, Rich.
Pastor, on behalf of Pastor Eder and Pastor Hill, thank you for coming here this morning to teach us about your mission. Thank you for your time this morning. Very educational. Also, Pastor Hill and Pastor Eder said, keep in mind there is a basket out of the atrium for your cards, your letters, your best wishes for Pastor and Emily as they begin a new chapter in their life and continue to spread the word of our Lord. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm available for any questions now or even after the next service. So we'll be, or during the luncheon, which I've heard is going to be amazing. Yes? Yeah. Yeah, so 40% of the people, when you ask them, like, hey, what religion are you? They'll probably say Catholic, but I don't know if they've ever stepped foot in a Catholic church. So they're like culturally Catholic, that we're supposed to be Catholic. About 16 to 20% would say there's some sort of Protestant, so that's primarily Baptist or Pentecostal. And then the rest are either nuns, so they don't identify with any religion, or they do like an ancestor worship, animism, so worshiping sort of like animal spirit. Or there's actually the largest, I'm going to call it voodoo. It's not quite voodoo, but it's similar to voodoo. There's the largest voodoo festival in all of the Caribbean, happens down in Toledo, the southern part of the country. So yes, there's going to be some interesting things we'll run into. Yes? That's an excellent question. I know we have one missionary there now, but I don't know all the details on it. But I know we're there, but don't know all the details on Cuba. Yep. I know we have at least one in Jamaica. I should know these better, but one in the Cayman Islands. Yep. Jay, anything? No? Great job. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for being faithful members right here. Appreciate it.